We've got everyone here.
Okay. I think
I'm
we're live
super
streaming.
excited. Dr. Robert Spicer, I haven't seen you in years.
I gotta check
Welcome.
my connection. Let me check my connection,
Okay.
and because I'm kind of
Okay.
picking and moving weird. Probably gonna switch to another device. So give me 1 second. But it's good to see everybody. Good morning.
Good morning. So we're just going to get started because we are streaming. We're streaming already. So I just want to say good morning. I will introduce myself, and then Dawn is going to continue with her big introduction. And I just want to say welcome to everyone who is will watch this either later or will be joining us soon. Today we have ImproveEd Exchange. It's a roundtable discussion, and the topic is on behavior and trauma. And it's a very, very important topic that has to be discussed and especially touched on in the educational setting. I am Dr. Angelica Benavides, known as Dr. B. I'm an educator. I've been a director of special education in one of the biggest districts here in Texas for about 19 years, and then retired. I've been teacher in all areas, especially reading. Was a master teacher in reading and specialized, of course, in special ed. Now I'm a publisher and I'm a global advocate for educational transformation. So, like I said, today we are going to dive deeply into a very important topic that is behavior and trauma. So often what we identify as behavior is really a student's the student is communicating a deeper need, a past experience, or some type of emotional struggle that they may not yet know how to use words to express themselves. So how do we touch that, right? So we're going to have those really beautiful conversations today on how are these amazing experts that are joining us today going to share. They're going to share some information on how to help these children. Donna?
All right. Well, thank you. I'm Dr. Donna, and I am the founder of Inspiring Leaders LLC. And together, Angelica and I created our Improve Ed Exchange. We've been writing collaborative books. We actually have some of our authors are on here right now, and I can't wait to introduce them to you. We're going to be doing a conference in September as well. So we've got a lot going on. We're super excited to be here. But I would be remiss if I didn't allow each of these incredible educators who we have online to introduce themselves. And we'll start with trauma today, because I think that trauma piece and managing trauma and those trauma informed practices, they are going to lead into the conversation around behaviors and turning behaviors around in schools. I've been in schools that don't feel like schools because the kids are running through the halls, right? But I've also seen those schools get turned around and then feel like schools where kids are actually they're in their classrooms and they're learning with their teachers. They've developed those relationships. So that turnaround is possible. It's hard work, but you don't want to hear it all from me. You want to hear it from these experts. This is their world here. And so I want to, we'll start with Lonnie and then go to Lisa and let you introduce yourselves. And then I'd like Dr. Joe and Dr. Robert to introduce themselves as well. And I'd be remiss. We have lots of doctors on this call. Lisa's a doctor as well, and so is Angelica. And yeah, so all right, go ahead, Lonnie.
Yeah, I'm Lonnie Fadel. I am a licensed professional clinical counselor in the Minneapolis area. I specialize in trauma. I was also a teacher, so I have my master's in education and special education. So I taught kindergarten, first grade, and special education. I was an inclusion teacher. And then I made the decision to switch into psychology. I started as a school link mental health therapist, and I was in the schools right after COVID. So I kind of was in the kind of thick of all of that trauma and how to support the students and the teachers and all the staff and even the families. And then, especially in this past year in Minneapolis, I am on a trauma response team called HAP, Humanitarian Assistance Program, the Trauma Response Network. And we specialize in EMDR, but I have been on the ground after the Annunciation shooting in September. And I have been working with the Columbia Heights schools, or I was, because luckily we kind of transitioned out of that. But I was working with the Columbia High Schools kind of most impacted directly by the immigration enforcement, trying to say it nicely, stuff that went on. So I tend to look at things from a trauma-informed lens, especially how do we support students who are living in trauma and helping teachers understand how they learn and why maybe they're not learning the way that they want them to learn.
Yeah. That's a tough place to be right now. Yeah. All right. Lisa.
Hello, good morning. My name is Lisa Collins. I am centered in, grounded over here in Portland, Oregon, originally from Los Angeles. I'm an author, a trauma practitioner, expert on racial healing. I'm a longtime educator who has taught elementary, middle, and high school. An assistant principal and director of academic programs, a master's in special education. Also, I taught reading. I got a certificate in reading, and also worked with the late and great Dr. Stanley Greenspan, who is the originator of Floor Time. So I have a certificate in that as well. And my viewpoint, and the reason why I wrote my book, The Truth About Trauma, is that what I found is that adults are triggering kids. And I said that as a new teacher, like, gosh, if the adults would be regulated, it could help, they can help co-regulate the children. And what I found in my research is that I was experiencing trauma and I didn't even know it. So my lens is centered with the Center of Justice and Peace Building, which is the group that wrote a model after 9/11, and that model is the center of the work that I do, whether it's racial healing or trauma work, just to regulate yourself. And I just probably, if I would say one thing, that if you could take this away, do you know when you are on the cycles of trauma response? And when you know that, then we're in the game. So I'm honored to be here. I do a lot of other things in the world, but this is very close to my heart. So thank you.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Joe.
All right. Great morning, everyone. Definitely a pleasure to be here with such a great panel as well. Thank you, Donna, as well as Angelica, for the invite. Appreciate you all. This is, first off, I'm Joe Griffin, originally from Clarksdale, Mississippi, home of the blues. So I know all about poverty, trauma, misbehavior, misconceptions, all of the above. Currently, I live in Los Angeles, California, where I am the Chief Academic Officer of Joe Griffin Global Consulting. We focus on literacy and leadership, bridging that gap, as well as increasing performance through our DIP approach, discipline culture plus instructional practice equals performance, which is our signature book and creation, stem from my dissertation, but that's one of the reasons why this topic is so important to me, and where that topic or that idea birthed from. You wouldn't believe that they thought I was a discipline problem in school, but they thought that I was a discipline problem. And even as a student, I knew that had something to do with the connection between myself and the teachers as well as the instruction not being pushed forward, because I was a fast learner. You got fast learners as well as you got struggling learners, and each of them, they require different things. So noting that as a student, and then going up through the ranks as a high school student, college student, going all these different places, and then as a professional teacher, then as a principal, I still noted this gap between the teachers and the principals that also affected what the students were able to do. And that, keeping that in mind, that also impacts behavior as well as the trauma that comes from someone misusing SEL, misusing that social emotional learning pieces, meaning that it impacts me or someone else in a way that really causes the trauma and then impacts the behavior, and take it a step further, impacts what they're able to do academically. So again, I'm thankful to be here on a topic like this today. Again, thanks for the invite. It's a pleasure being here.
Absolutely. We're thankful to have all of you. And last but not least, the amazing Robert Spicer.
Good morning. Does everybody hear me? Everybody hears me?
We can hear you. Yes.
Perfect. Good morning. My name is Dr. Robert Spicer, and once upon a time, I was a young man with hair. Lost all my hair working with these very amazing children and staff in the great city of Chicago, Illinois, when I became a school teacher at 22 years old. It was at that time where that city was going through a great upheaval in its public housing experiment. And in August of 1995, I set foot at a school called Sojourner Truth Elementary School, where I got to meet some amazing children. But there was a philosophy that was unleashed on the school district, and that was zero tolerance. And the focus on zero tolerance was suspension, expulsion, and arrest. And could you imagine expelling a kindergartner, suspending a third grader, arresting a first grader? Well, this is what was going on in Chicago at the time. I did not know what the philosophy was, but I saw its vestiges, and I saw its impact on the families there that I served. After leaving that school, I had the opportunity to work with an organization called Community Justice Youth Institute, and they taught me about the philosophy and the practices of restorative justice. And restorative justice, in a nutshell, is justice that heals. I learned how to hold peace circles. I learned how to do victim offender mediation, peer mediation, and the like of some sage masters, one of them being Cheryl Graves and Ora Shu, who then introduced me to some amazing women and men who have been doing this work all over the globe. And then I lost my job during the 2008 upheaval, the economic upheaval that was going on, and I was so hurt. But then was able to go back into the schools as an administrator. I went back into the schools as a dean, the chief dean. And so I felt pretty good, man. I got chief in front of my name. That made me feel, I thought, boy, I was something else. But just because you got a title doesn't mean that you got the respect. And so when I walked into that school, I walked into a school that was going through a great travail, a great turnaround process. And I was at the epicenter. And in the midst of that, with myself and the principal, Elizabeth Dozier, we realized that the approach that we were using was wrong. We were using zero tolerance, and it was not helping the children, it was harming them. And these were teenagers. So I got to see it being done at the elementary level, and then I got to see it being done at the high school level. But the beauty is that I had this skill. And so she took away my chief, so sad about it, made me the culture and climate coordinator, put me in my office, and said, I want you to do all of that stuff that I hear the community says that you're good at, which is the peace circle. And I want that for my school. And we were able to turn around that school. We were able to create some incredible opportunities for the young people to go to college, create incredible opportunities for the young people to travel all over the United States. And we were featured on CNN's Chicagoland, which opened up an opportunity for the world to see what Liz and myself were doing at that school. And that's how I met Donna. Because great superintendent was nice enough, who went to the same high school I went to, Superintendent Contreras, called me up to Syracuse, and they said they had the same problems that we were having in Chicago, and they wanted that same work. And that's how I got a chance to work in the great city of Syracuse, New York. And since then, my wife and I started our own business called Restorative Strategies, where we travel all over the globe and we train and support this incredible work of restorative justice in schools. And the main focus is to create culture and climate where young people and adults feel safe. Culture is what we practice, promote, and permit, and climate is the overall feel of a school building. And once we began to move into that direction, we began to see great gains. And right now, I'm finishing up contract work with my hometown of Hempstead, New York, where we're doing the same work that we did in Syracuse. And hopefully the Knicks will win, and New York will become an incredible state with basketball team championship that will also help to influence and continue to support the great work that Dr. Donna and others are doing in the great state of New York. Thank you for listening.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you all. See, we bring like incredible people to this. I'm just always so humbled and honored for the people that I have the opportunity to meet and network with and work with. To be able to have this platform now with Dr. B to highlight the work that everybody does. I'm getting chills right now just thinking about who we have in the room here. So I want to start with Lisa and Lonnie, and Angelica, you can feel free to pop in here at any time with questions, and Joe and Robert, if you want to hop in too, you can. But Lisa and Lonnie, in this world of working with trauma in schools with our students, our teachers, our administrators, like they're all experiencing some level of trauma. Like, can you frame up for us kind of what you're seeing across the board that kind of frames up what the challenge really is here?
If I go, we're seeing something totally unlike anything we've ever seen. That's kind of this cumulative, layered, chronic trauma that isn't just happening on an individual level with students and teachers and staff and communities. It's collective. And so we're seeing this kind of like event after event after event where there is no time for restoration, for healing, because it's ongoing. And so before we would treat trauma and the trauma would be in the past, but now we're living in that. And so trying to reframe our relationship with what it means, I call it like the trauma brain, to be able to be present and learn when you are in constant chaos and your nervous system is in constant chaos and you're not able to absorb things because you're just in survival mode. And so one of the things that I've seen is that teachers expect kids to learn the same way that they did 5-10 years ago, but they're not, because we're in a very different world than we were 5 or 10 years ago. And so that is something that I'm really passionate about, is helping to educate educators about how we talk to kids, how we see kids, instead of just sending them for an ADHD or an autism assessment. Are we looking at that? Or are we looking at trauma? Because they are so overlapping. And then our responses to them. So that is kind of one of the things that I'm seeing, is this kind of layered, cumulative, ongoing trauma that there's no time for rest and recovery within the nervous system.
Yeah, thanks. I'll piggyback on to that. You know what? I'm also an assistant professor at Lewis and Clark College. So I teach people who want to be administrators. And so these are teachers who want to be administrators. And what I have found in my work and being very connected to schools from that vantage point and as a longtime educator is that we don't know what we don't know. So when we think about trauma, there's individual trauma, there's collective trauma that has been mentioned. There is secondary trauma, there is cultural trauma, there is historical trauma, there is
Yeah.
structural trauma, there is participatory trauma, which By doing your job, you're experiencing trauma. That's people in education, first responders, etc. And then we also have dignity violations, which occur on a regular basis inside of a school structure. So, that being said, we have all of these different traumas that I didn't even know all those traumas existed when I went to study trauma in 2015. Then we have the intersectionality of poverty, how we treat poverty in this country, how we look at poverty. Then we have the intersectionality of race, gender, and we have all of those things. Plus, we have, as they say in interpersonal neurobiology, we have the attachment. What attachments do we have? And all of those things swirling is like we have unhealthy people in front of unhealthy people. So when we have a leader who is punishing their teachers and the teachers who are now punishing their kids, whether they know it or not, that is the problem. So, how do we humanize each one of our leaders to take care of their teachers, to take care of their students? And I'll just say briefly, I have an example of this, and I'll just shrink it down. I was helping a school. I was with a principal. She got a call to go to music. I didn't know why the music teacher had a walkie. But I I followed her to music, and it was Mikey. And before we could hit the door, the teacher told us Mikey is, he's just, he wants his way, he's manipulative, he's this and that. He was like, before we could step inside, she was in our face. And to make a long story short, it's a great story, but the principal left me alone in the room with Mikey and the teacher who I did not know. And Mikey was laying on the floor in the corner. And I went down and laid on the floor next to Mikey and said, "Hey, buddy, I really want to help you. Really, I do. But I don't know what you need. Can you shake your head? Yes or no? You don't have to talk. Do you want to talk about it?" He said, "No." "Do you want to draw about it?" And a stranger got up and walked out of that room with Mikey. We have to humanize what we're doing so that we could get in touch with our heart, to get in touch with that we're spinning like tops in a world that is spinning like a top.
Can I say amen to Dr. Collins? I'm sorry, I felt church in there. I just say amen to that.
I also want to add intersectionality. A group that
Thank you.
often gets overlooked is religious trauma and religious groups,
Well, let's go
especially
back.
now in the world that we live in. That's a group that often are overlooked when we look at intersectionality as well.
Well, let's go back to that story, which was a great story. And I'm sorry I'm delayed. I didn't know where I was going, but by golly, I found it, and here I are. The work that we do in helping educators, it's real simple. Your teachers, your educators themselves, if the adults are not regulated, if they're not able to manage their emotions and the stress they feel, the kids are going to pick up on it, and they're going to behave just the way Mikey behaved. The kids, you can't, Mikey, teachers have long become indoctrinated. I'm a fifth generation educator to believe that the children are the problem. The children are not the problem. The children are trying to solve a problem. And that one perspective, when teachers grasp that, helps educators shift their perspective about the children they really hope will be absent the next day. And that is evidence of what I think is systemic in teacher education. We don't help teachers develop higher enough levels of emotional intelligence to be able to work with the children who come through the door, because inevitably the skills that the children don't have are also the skills that the teachers don't have.
Amen.
Yeah.
Mm,
So,
mm.
Elizabeth, can you take a moment and introduce yourself as well? Because we've got some big giants here in the room, and you're among them.
Don't make my head
So
so
tell
big
me
I can't get through the
about
door now.
yourself, and then we'll continue.
Thank you, Dr. Donna. I'm Elizabeth Power. I'm the founder and the executive director of the Trauma Informed Academy. Our work is to help people reduce the impact of overwhelming experiences that make them think they might die or lose their mind or be badly injured. This includes educators who then can help students more effectively. Our work is in use on every continent except Antarctica. In Africa, where we pioneered the educational piece, we were able to help educators and their students see a 28-point increase in their math scores by simple things like what I just shared with you, by challenging some of the things they've come to believe about other people and helping them find ordinary, common sense, practical ways to both care for themselves and care for their students. Because when teachers have a good time, students have a good time.
Mhm. Yeah. So the question, like, you're all laying out we're laying out some really heavy stuff here, right? This is the reality that we're working with in our, not just in our schools, but
Every day.
everywhere.
Mhm.
But we focus mostly on schools, and so, you know, as a former teacher, as a former administrator, we have this responsibility to educate kids and all of that stuff. So how do we manage all of this trauma that is going on? How do we recognize it? How, like, how do you know when you need to lay down on the floor with a kid? Right? Like, so what, like, I don't know, just take that from wherever you'd like to. Anyone, any of the three of you ladies, and the rest of us will chime in here and there.
I think the most brilliant interventions are sometimes the ones that make the least sense. I had a similar result when I lay down on the floor and acted like a submissive dog in a restrictive psychiatric facility where a little girl had been brought in from the Lakota Nation and diagnosed with childhood psychosis because all she did was bark and bite and growl. No one stopped to think about the fact that her family had res dogs, and when they were arrested for making crack cocaine, or meth, she had bonded with the dogs. I think the biggest thing is helping educators because, again, if we're the adults in the room, now, okay, there's a structural problem that's dinging in the back of my head. Educators' schedules are not set up to help educators manage the classroom. They're set up to meet the requirements of administrations that often are trying to satisfy other constituents. And the administrators don't have any higher level of emotional intelligence than the educators do. Here's the thing I want to share with you all. Number one, the word trauma is getting massively overused. It's been banned by the government temporarily, at least here in Nashville. You can't say the T word hardly.
Hmm.
When you stop and realize that the skills, the social emotional learning skills, which have often been accused of being woke, are the skills for civility that if our adults could pass on to their children, they would, but the adults, for whatever reason, may not be able to. And that trauma, those things that we call trauma, we use that word very casually. It's really anything that causes a child or an adult to think they might die or lose their mind or be badly injured. Chances are we have educators like the ones I deal with who think it only means abuse and neglect. And that means that you're pushing that off on the children and the adults whom you label as traumatized. It is not just abuse and neglect. It is medical crises. It is hunger. It is homelessness. It is natural disasters. It's anything. And when you back up to use a different language, you take some of the emotional charge off the word. But the skills for mastering it, self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, social skills, empathy, and decision-making, according to all the literature, and I've spent 10 years teaching psychiatry at Georgetown as an adjunct and had lots of time to review the content, are the same skills in emotional intelligence, are the same skills in social emotional learning. They are human being skills. And so looking for what might be the most symbolic thing I can do. Did you know that when you offer a child a snack and say, would you like something to eat? If a child says, I'd love something to eat, or grabs hungrily at the snack, that tells you that the child is regulated enough or they're calm enough internally to eat, to think, to ration, to be able to relate. And so when you relate first and reason later, you're following what the brain automatically does of its own accord.
Mm,
You
those
got
are really
bars. I'm into hip hop, Elizabeth Powers, and you dropping bars. I
Thank
like
you.
that.
Thank
I
you,
like
Joe.
that.
You might want to drop that S on my name because nobody want
Oh,
any
I'm
more
sorry.
powers from me.
Power. My bad.
They don't want any more power than I've already got. They don't want to give me a bit more.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Joe.
I'm
Well, what
Robert. Joe's down at the bottom. I'm Robert.
Yeah,
I love you. I love you. I love you in spite of it and everything always. And as long as I got a biscuit, you got half.
That's right. That's right.
I
I
love
like
it.
this idea of really knowing what trauma is and what it isn't. And that's one of the reasons too why I wrote the book, actually for myself and actually for other people, is that if something happens in the body, it's too much too fast. And that fear that I had that it's the end of the world, me living in that on a regular basis every day, I thought that was just normal. Everyone is like this.
Well, Lisa, it has become normal. I mean, that's the thing I want to stress. I think it's really important for us to understand that post-pandemic, present time in the world, look at all the regional and all the national and international conflict and war, and we live under constant threat. God, now it's asteroids, for heaven's sakes. Well, of course, the lady in Eufaula, Alabama didn't know that was what was going to happen to her when she lay down to take a nap and got hit in the leg by a meteorite. But we are the thing I want to stress to you all is at a grinding level. This is normal now. I don't know if it's ever not been normal, but we are keenly attuned to it in this time. And so for us, because we are now talking about, quietly cracking. We are all quietly cracking. It helps me get away from having to use the T word. My book will be out in, I hope, 2 months if I'm lucky and live that long. But we are all quietly cracking, and what we want is to be unbreakably alive. But we're not going to get that by talking about trauma, and we're not going to get there by being. So we're going to get there by hunkering down and settling in and learning how to open up in a whole different way. It doesn't mean accepting this as a fact of life. But when you look at the baseline around the world, honestly, we'd just be plain out flat lying if we didn't say that around the world, name me one person who hasn't faced something so overwhelming they thought they might die or lose their mind or be badly injured. Find me one person living in hunger. Find me one person living with bayonets and guns and bombs outside their door. Find me one person who can't walk out their door because they're afraid somebody's going to hurt them. Find me one person who hasn't lost a loved one, who's not been traumatized. This is now our normal.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm through preaching. I'm going to quit going to church.
Well, I appreciate what Lonnie said about the intersection of religion in this. I'm an
Mhm,
ordained minister,
mhm.
and so some of the work in my ministry has been able to help me cope with a variety of traumas and issues. Being a Black man living in the Trump era,
Oh, Lord, yeah.
something that has been helpful to me was what Dr. Lisa said. Dr. Lisa Collins said about historical trauma. And so during the pandemic, we were all locked in and made to watch George Floyd's lynching. At the
Ugh.
same time, we were scared that there was this virus outside that could kill us, and we were seeing people die. So the whole world went through this global trauma, but at the same time, there was this historical trauma that was happening, which also captivated the whole world, and that prompted me to write my first book, which is Aspirational Justice, which was taking some of the best of what we learned in restorative justice, what I learned in that work of using healing techniques, trauma-informed care, and a variety of other social emotional techniques, and really applying it to racial healing and atonement, really focusing on how African Americans can move into a process where they can actually flourish and not feel like that there's a knee on our neck, which is a continuous trauma from
Oof.
transatlantic
Oh,
slave trade,
preach,
slavery,
preach.
to Jim Crow, and on. And so I really appreciate you, Lisa, Dr. Lisa, going to that class and getting all of those different traumas. Because when you said historical, it like sparked something in me, like, oh, that's a part of the list. That's
Oh,
what my book is
huge.
focusing on. And it's like, yes, it is. It's focusing on the historical trauma and how we can begin to meet and use our imagination to heal it. And that's where aspirational justice comes in. Bringing it back to the schools, and thank you, Lonnie, so much for bringing that religious piece in. Because sometimes you can't go into spaces and kind of talk about that, but I feel like it's important that people know that faith is important to people and that it can help deal with some of the traumas that we're dealing with. But in the schools, there's a book written by a young lady named Neela Collins, and the title is, if you don't feed the teachers, they'll eat the children.
Right.
And so the whole focus of this book is giving administrators and teachers and students the tools so that we're not eating each other, right? We're not, and I'm not saying, you know, in the real sense, but in the sense of how we are hollering, how we are using these draconian control theory techniques, how we're using these variety of techniques to try and get control of the children's behavior when we're looking at these takeovers that are going on all over the United States. And I sat in a room with some young people, and basically they told me, Dr. Joe, straight up, they said, we want freedom.
Yeah.
We feel so closed in. We don't feel like y'all see us. So most of the students that are coming out there in the takeovers are just trying to meet each other, meet up with a girl, meet up with a guy. But because they're teenagers and their frontal lobe is not formulated yet, they're not thinking about the long-term effects of coming out, thousands of you at a time at a particular location, and what that could occur. People jumping on cars, people driving their cars into crowds, bringing guns. All of these things are a part of that bigger conversation that you guys are talking about, specific to trauma. But it's how we meet the moment is what's going to be significant. And that's what I know all of us have done in our various groups, how we've met the moment, whether it's teaching, whether it's preaching, whether it's creating tools, toolkits, whether it's writing books. How do we meet these moments? And that's what I think this time that we're on in this session, flipping the script, is so important to that.
I want to, do you mind? So I want to add to that. So being in Minneapolis, there's this like residual collective trauma from that. But I want to talk about two different things. First is the religious trauma that we don't talk about. So I'm a Jewish therapist. I specialize in lots of different traumas, but we're not looking at also Jewish children right now who are being attacked, having swastikas drawn on their lockers, things like that, having people drive into schools and being afraid to go to school. So there's that piece. The other piece is what I saw here working in Columbia Heights, especially with those specific schools, was that school was sometimes the only safe place that these kids had to go, but it wasn't safe to leave their homes. And so teachers were asked this whole other level to be a social worker, to deliver food, to deliver diapers, to kind of secretly transport kids to school. And so what school used to be this safe place for children, sometimes it was the only safe place they had outside of their home, is no longer safe. So there's that aspect as well. And we also, I mean, there's school shootings everywhere, but I also saw this after Annunciation where students would come to my office and I don't want to go to school. If I go to mass, am I going to get shot? So those are things that we're also not thinking about at the safety of the schools that we are, the environments that we're bringing in on top of the unsafe communities and issues that are going on systemically. And I had another thought, but I lost it. But those are kind of the things that we need to look at on a bigger picture, because I think we get so focused in what we know. Sometimes we need to broaden our view and see what other people are experiencing as well, and seeing from that lens. So when you, in Columbia, the occupation of ICE here is gone, but it's not gone. We still have this residue. Yeah. But it's how do you help a kid feel safe to come to school again? How do you help a teacher feel like they are not helpless when their kid is crumbled in the corner crying, like, and they don't know why, and then the teacher doesn't know why, and then the social workers don't have support, and then the admin doesn't have support, and so we need to look at things from a bigger picture. And then there's that intergenerational historical trauma piece where you have immigrants who come here and then they're told you are not safe to leave your homes, you're being kicked out of the country. And so there's also that level of historical trauma and intergenerational trauma that's going on as well, that we need to look at, not just what's happened here, but what's happened individually in families and different groups. I think of the Somali population here, which is such an integral part of our community. And they were invited here. They were invited here 22, 23 years ago as refuge. And then the very place that invited them was starting to kick them out. So there's also that sense of safety as well for children, and not really understanding what that means, but they feel it in their bodies.
Yes.
And they're responding to something that they might not have responded to, that they might not have personally experienced.
I think your points are well taken, Lonnie. And you look at welcoming the stranger, which is a key tenet of, I understand, the Jewish faith and certainly of the Christian community, though we don't necessarily, any of us, do all that well of it. When I worked with the churches in North Minneapolis prior to the murder of George Floyd, one of the things we wrangled with was, how do we help the people of faith meet the people in the street, no matter where they come from? We had imams, we had pastors, we had priests involved. And I think the challenge is that, I'll just say here in Nashville, as a woman who is older, has physical disabilities that are invisible, who is part of the LGBTQIA, pick an alphabet, any alphabet community, my friends and I don't feel safe leaving our houses. We don't feel safe leaving our houses because we're women. We don't feel safe leaving our houses because we're marginalized. My Palestinian neighbors don't feel safe leaving their house because they're marginalized. My Jewish friends don't feel safe leaving. The question is it unique or is it universal?
Mm.
I think it's universal, and I think we focus so much on what our differences are that we don't focus on what our similarities are and what we can empathize with others.
Right.
And that is something that I saw in the schools, especially after COVID. And I worked in a school that was kind of lower SES. There was a higher Somali population and Latinx community, but most of the teachers were white. And so they had no idea. They just kind of judged rather than looking at what those kids were experiencing and needing on top of everything else as well.
Yeah.
So I think that when we focus on what we have in common, it helps us to see people on a whole other level.
But there is a great divide that we have to deal with somehow. And I'm sorry, I feel like I'm
on.
making up for my first 20 minutes I didn't get here. When I went to Africa, and I work a lot with indigenous populations, and I think one of the challenges that we all deal with, if you are a person who is a person of color or a person of Native American origin, I mean, if you're Black, if you're Indian, if you're Mexican, if you are a person who's been indigenous, I want to ask you, how did your ancestors learn? Your ancestors didn't sit in the back of a room staring at other kids' heads. They didn't have the rigid need to categorize that we have as white people. And I'm just going to say it that way. I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend. It's just the easiest, fastest way to talk about this. When you look at the values in mental health, and those of you who are clinicians or social workers, you know, our Western values are individuality, competition, power over everything that's antithetical to trauma responsive systems. And the indigenous Afrocentric and other centric world has values that are much healthier. And so there's a substrata of challenge here that we don't talk about, both in faith and in non-faith traditions. And and that is that the culture that we live in is grounded on values and deep philosophical beliefs that are antithetical to health. Every social worker, every psychologist, every psychiatrist I ever trained had been schooled in white Western thinking, which says that we're supposed to heal by becoming community and connecting and building a relationship. And yet we are also informed by these competitive values that are not particularly as healthy as they could be. And I don't know how we will ever get around that unless we confront it, because the African communities I'm working with are going, why should we listen to you? I said, because you shouldn't, except that I get it, that what we are doing and the foundations by which we believe that put us into competition and power over and individual over community and yada, 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 are not as healthy and don't point towards the goals that we say are healthy. How do we align that? And that means, I think, having much more serious conversations with people who are different from us to find out, okay, I really don't like it when I do this. What could I do instead that is more like the healthy way that my ancestors did it?
I think that
That's
I'll
my
just
last
chime
cream
in
from punch bowl.
I was just saying, I'll
Good.
chime in for a minute. I think that those experiences are both unique as well as universal. And I say that because one of the premises that we talk about in our company is connection, empowerment, and collaboration. And it's a couple of things that have to occur during that first phase of connection. You have to be able to respect both individuality as well as variety, or we'll whisper diversity. All right. Uh, we'll whisper diversity. But individuality, see, it's hard for me to respect and understand variety or diversity if I'm not in tune with the individuality piece. It's hard for me to understand the individuality piece if I'm not in tune with variety and diversity. For instance, we are all individuals on this call, but we represent a diverse group of people. And when you're standing in those gaps, just like Ms. Powell, Dr. Powell just said, it's hard to understand if you have not been in those shoes, if you have not had those conversations, if you have not made those attempts to be truly connected, where you can move forward toward that empowerment stage where now we're able to start putting things in place and put our structures into a particular format where we're going to use them. And now we go on to where we truly collaborate and we're able to move schools, turn around schools. Those are things that we use in all of the particular schools that we were able to have great success in turning them around. So I agree. This is a great conversation, you all. We can go all day on this one.
Now you know why we scheduled so much time.
I really agree. Like, if you have never experienced it or witnessed it or seen it, how do you know? That's when I love traveling and going. I've spent a couple of years going to South Africa for different trainings. I've kind of I'm going to Australia and working with an Aboriginal community. When I was a student teacher, actually I'm from Chicago originally, my first student teaching was at a Southside YMCA preschool, because I was early childhood. And I'm like this privileged Jewish white kid from the suburbs. And it was the first time I was faced with that reality firsthand, but it was an education of switching my mindset of what the reality is for other people outside of myself. And I think that's also an important part of educating educators, trauma therapists in general. When I was getting my master's in clinical psych, we had a field experience and we had to go to different communities and spend time to see what it's like in other areas. We might not understand completely, but at least we can see it and conceptualize it. And so if we're not educating people to conceptualize other views and other experiences, how are we going to expect them to adapt to different forms of trauma? There's a diagnosis that I like to use. It's not a trauma diagnosis. It's other reactions to severe stress, because trauma is so overused. Bullying can be trauma. We don't look at that. But what does that mean in that culture, and what's that culture's kind of relationship to mental health, to accepting help, all those things? And then the other piece is attunement, right? We need to be attuned to our students and to each other in order to have that kind of baseline connection. Because if we're not attuned, there's no way we can be connected.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to jump in here for a second, because Dr. Power said the thing that I was thinking in my mind. That's a ESPN. I guess she has the telepathy or something.
It's EHP, honey, not ESP.
And in what I learned in my own research about myself, my autoethnography, is that I am inside of the fishbowl. You know, I am living in settler colonialism. And I didn't get that because I thought if Joe could have it, I could have it. But that's not true. As a Black woman, what helped me to have what Pablo Ferri calls critical consciousness, and I call racial consciousness, is I needed to realize that where I lived had settler colonialism. I needed that information to help me process and emotionally feel safe and know in the organizations I was in what to do. That is not spoken. And I had the privilege of teaching with Dr. Muhammad Khalifa in Georgia last week. And this grounding of knowing settler colonialism and tracing back our decisions, are they savage or are they don't have a soul? Those two decisions and how schools make decisions is that has to be named.
That's
And I
critical.
thank you, Dr. Powers, for naming that, because we ignore that. And when we go on to the things about being about school, hitting that bell, standing in a line,
That ain't
sitting in
nothing.
a row.
Mm. That's training factory pieces. That's training people to be widgets. We're
Yes.
developing employees, not entrepreneurs and not leaders.
Yeah.
So we have no idea what the indigenous way of life is because we never did want to know. We erasure of their ways of being. My ancestors erased the ways of being. And then we want to ask kids what Jeff Andrade says is like, we don't want to, can you be who you are when you step inside of the school building? And the answer would be no. You
Mm.
cannot be. You don't have identity confluence. You don't have an academic identity. If your pants are sagging, can you pass the math test? Yeah, you can.
Oh, what a concept.
So we're talking a lot
Most
about
of them pass it. That honestly, they usually the
yeah.
smarter kids. They just haven't applied themselves. There's a difference between the knowing and doing and
hmm
actually applying.
Yeah, and I worked at a charter school for pregnant and parenting teens and high school dropouts, and we had a very unique model. And what we used to tell those children was pregnancy and parenting have no correlation to performance. Do they change your situation and make you change how you're going to do it? Absolutely. But you can still perform, even if you're a parent or you are pregnant.
What a
I
concept.
So,
think that has to do with the epistemology of our teachers, like in the discourse that we carry, because those epistemologies are not challenged. They're not in any ed leadership program, any teacher preparation program. I teach it and I get blowback every semester. Every semester I get blowback for pushing them to be able to humanize students.
But it's like that. I think we're going all the way back to, and I don't know what's before this, but I'm sure there's something was before the doctrine of discovery that causes us to classify, because the classification process says that we must grade based on A through F. A through F is not realistic. When a child fails a class, I've been there. What do you have left to lose? You no longer have any motivation to perform at any level because you've made an F. You're a flunky, you're a dropout, you're a failure, and you know it. One simple tool that I'm seeing used in a few schools is the grading system of now versus not yet, which humanizes performance dramatically. I'm working with an older woman right now. I do some private tutoring. She has multiple disabilities and she wants to learn to use her computer. Well, she's been taking classes where she's been getting letter grades and she's gotten F's. She says, I'm a failure. I can't trust this. The first thing is let's stop having that word come out of your mouth or in your mind or in your heart. It's either now or not yet. Just because it takes you more trials to success doesn't mean you're a flunky. You perform at and I think we have to get away from it is possible to assess for effectiveness without grading for performance the way we currently do it. But boy, howdy, that's a long conversation.
And I do have to hop off, but I teach in the graduate psychology program at St. Mary's here in Minneapolis. And I'm teaching a course on practitioner burnout and resilience. And we were talking about it like 2 weeks ago, the importance of having that one teacher, that one mentor, that one person who sees you. That one person you're going to remember the rest of your life. That teacher can teach you the value of the importance of who you are and acceptance. So I think that's also a piece of it. I remember that one teacher who sat with me on the bathroom floor crying in 3rd grade. I love being that teacher for kids who then come back to me. I don't even recognize them because now they're like in their 20s. Hey, remember that time that I was like hitting that person and you sat with me? That's what kids remember. I think that is at the base of how we help kids with trauma, is being that person for them.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to leave it with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I also
Also-
wanted to add, I mean, I know that the conversations are wonderful, but there's like an incident that just happened here in the Dallas area where a whole apartment complex burned. So that's another piece of drama, the natural disasters, the accidents that happen where these children all of a sudden become homeless because of fires, because of explosions, or just because of being homeless. I know that I helped oversee the homeless department, and it's bigger than I ever imagined, of children being homeless and not having food and a place to sleep. You know, they're sleeping in cars or wherever they find a space to sleep. So all that we tend to forget, and we feel that everybody has a home, everybody has a bed, and they don't. They
Mhm.
don't.
Hierarchy of needs. Thank you all so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you for having me, and
Safe travels.
thank
Safe
you.
travels. Yeah. So I have a question, just to help our educators and who are out there and might be listening to this. How do educators identify the trauma? Like what things will they see? And what are some of the top things that they could do to address that trauma? Or what
Well,
should they stop doing, or continue doing?
number one, stop throwing children over the wall to the counselors. They're already overloaded. Number two, if you know the areas that traumatic experiences impact, and they're universal, we're now teaching universal exposure with unique reaction, which gets away from, well, I was assaulted 5 times, so I'm more traumatized than you are. We want to get away from the Olympics. Children who have difficulty making choices. If a child has difficulty making choices because maybe their choices weren't listened to, or maybe they didn't have many choices in their control, or maybe they're in an environment that didn't have many choices they could make. Simple things like, for example, how many of you all hit your snooze button today, and how many times did you hit it? That's a choice. What are you wearing? I'm sure you have other clothes in your closet. That is a choice. Just going back to the very basic, simple things that maybe children didn't get to learn, or that because of the activation of the HPA axis got frozen, and helping them learn that they can make a choice about, well, which piece of paper would you like, this one or that one. Forced choice is especially good in lower grades or for children who've experienced trauma in early childhood. The second is, here's the simplest one. You can tell how a child is doing when they come in the door. Greet every child at the door and call them by name. You get instant reading on the weather that they're bringing in the room with them. Acknowledge that, as we have done in this conversation, it's not just abuse and neglect. It's medical crises. It's natural disasters. It's a crisis in the neighborhood the night before. Ask me about our drag racing event sometime. It's all of the things that we don't think about and the things that we do think about, because sociologically, when we think trauma, we think abuse and neglect, not 5 fire engines and 6 cop cars outside the apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, when a child has difficulty regulating their feelings, you can start the day by breathing or dancing or meditating or getting it out. Set your room, your way you design your room. Have a place on the wall that's blank, so children have a place to rest their brains. What happens to children, and this is a place where it makes me gnash my teeth. Children get upset at school because they don't have enough capacity. Their cup is running over. And when you can help them expand their cup by using whatever you are teaching, whatever your subject matter is, you can build in questions and answers that reflect on helping children manage their feelings, managing your own feelings better, being able to say, wow, I'm so sorry. I got a little too upset right then. Let me back up and calm down. So they see you doing what you want them to do because they may not see it at home. And I'm going to stop right there. But it's body, it's big muscle movement. It's helping children learn simple self-regulation skills. It's helping them learn how to make choices. It's helping them find safety in whatever way they can while acknowledging that there's really no such thing as safety. It's something we teach because it makes us feel better, but we cannot control all the risks there are. So begin to talk about how do we reduce the risks? How could Columbus have reduced his risks? How might how might the churches reduce the risks for overwhelming things that really reflect a misuse of power, knowledge, and authority to occur? How might we reduce those risks? Those are the top 3 that I've found lately, or 4. I can't count good.
Fantastic.
I
Thank
would
you.
say, thank you, Dr. Powers. I would say, for me, I've shrunk it down and I really focused on educators and people, the adults in the building.
Good.
Um, Body, being able to recognize when your body is out of whack, when you are, and one of the things that happened with Mikey is the teacher came back later to want to know what happened to Mikey. He wanted to know what punishment did he get.
Uh-huh.
And when we had that teacher sit down, when she finally came in the room and sat down, I asked her, "Why do you think Mikey's like this?" And she said, "He's manipulative. He's always wants his way. He, And she just, and I said, "But why?" And she repeated it. And so what I said when I was teaching back in Georgia last week is, watch for scripts. Leaders, watch for scripts in your adults when they're repeating the same thing over and over. They are in a trauma response. They're in a response. And I asked her again why, and she burst into tears and said,
Bingo.
"That's the way it was in my house. My dad was an alcoholic." So,
Bingo.
body, where are you with your body? And so this is my own personal rule. Eat when you're hungry, go to the bathroom when you need to. That's just like a basic. If I can do that, body, being in touch with your body, having a relationship with your body, your mind, what's going through your mind? If it's not you're wonderful, you're beautiful, you're the best, it's not you. Whose voice is that? And then spirit. When we work on these 3, they work in conjunction with each other, and the adults need to be there for the kids. And if our adults are flipping their lids, then they are causing our children to feel unsafe. So to me, it's body, mind, spirit. Definitely looking at organizational trauma, this Vivian and Horman's work, and seeing if some of your systems, which we know are grounded in settler colonialism, are actually causing more harm on a regular basis. So quickly, that's what I would say.
Wow. I love it. I
We
love it. And
teach.
I want to go ahead.
I'm going to piggyback on Dr. Collins. Dr. Collins, I love what you say. I want to connect with you, and I will. Um, we teach a
Same here.
program called 3 Magic Questions, and the first one is, I wonder what I now I'm watching a mockingbird. It's like squirrel. Okay. When a child misbehaves or an adult's overwhelmed, the question I'm asking myself, I wonder what that child needs. I wonder, or that adult. I wonder if it's power or control or choice or reduction in risk. Because if you
Mhm.
look at that child at Mikey and you look at the teacher couldn't figure out what Mikey might be needing because the teacher was overabsorbed in what they needed. They needed to be able to separate from their history enough that they could recognize that was then, this is now, it's Mikey, not me. But that one magic question of, it came out of having a guy try to run me off the road, and I thought to myself, I can't believe he ran me off the road. How dare he do that? And I slowed down. I thought, wait a minute, because I was not in my body. When I got in my body, I thought, do I really believe that he got up this morning think about Mikey. He got up this morning and he decided to make my life miserable by going, oh yes, at 8:45 in the morning, I'm going to be on 65 North at Armory Place. Elizabeth Power's going to be there in her silver Subaru, and I'm going to run her off the road. Ooh, that's going to be so much fun. Do I really think he did that? No. Do I do that? Do I wake up and decide that? Maybe 2% of the people in this world do that. They are truly the ones that are truly, truly, truly beyond any kind of care or growth. Maybe 2%. I'm not in that 2%. Why do I think he is? I wonder what he needed. And when we look at it, it's usually power, safety, control, choice. And those are all things that children have to have and should have.
It's funny that you would say that, Dr. Powers and Dr. Collins, because literally I was thinking the same thing. When you were talking about the magic questions, I just call them the 2 questions. How do you feel? What do you need? And when we've done that in circles, when we've done that using a restorative response, when we've done that dealing with young people who've come with a variety of different traumas, from historical, interpersonal, and you name it, those 2 questions have been the most powerful to our students and our staff, especially the what you need question. Because now they get an opportunity to tell you what you need. And if they trust you enough, they'll trust that you'll actually either help them meet the need or at least listen. That's why I always say at the end of anything that I say, thank you for listening. Right? We had this model, it's called the Boys Town Education Model, that we used in terms of teaching social skills. And we realized these teenagers didn't have these job readiness skills. And so the principal realized that as you are doing this restorative work, Robert, I want you to also connect in this Boys Town Education Model, meaning that these young people don't know how to give an apology. So let's teach them the steps. Look at a person. Tell the person why you are sorry for the thing that you have done. Allow that person to listen to what you've said, and then at the end say, thank you for listening. One of the skills that the young people failed at was following instructions. And that's how those young people were ending up in the dean's office. And the principal realized in her infinite wisdom, let's take those students who are coming into the dean's office, 60% of them, and send them to your office. And let's see if a restorative response would be better than a punitive response. And what we realized was the restorative response was better because we were using, as you said, Dr. Power, we were setting up our young people for success. As you said, set up the room for success, set up your school building for success, and focus in on a restorative response first before we want to think about using some type of disciplinary process, and then change the whole vocabulary and understanding of what discipline means. It doesn't mean to punish, hit, hurt, but it means to teach. The root word discipline means to teach. So even in the dean's office, you are teaching these young people, not in a punitive, harsh manner, but in a manner where the young people can be restored. Even if you have to suspend them, there's going to be a reentry circle when they get back. So the students could not get away from some type of restorative response. The students don't care what you know. They want to know that you care. Once they know you care, then anything you have to teach them, even something as weird as sitting around a circle or around a rug, holding a rock, and being told, when you have this stone, you have this talking piece, only you speak, no one else can speak, one mic. The weirdest stuff that they were experiencing, but yet it spoke to their humanity. It spoke to the very DNA of who we are as human beings. That's how we learned. We learned through music, dance. I'm talking about, going all the way back. We weren't sitting in rows. We were sitting in circles. And we were learning from our elders through storytelling. And that's what met them. Even the teenagers met them where they were like, wow, I haven't sat in a circle like this since, elementary school. And it feels really good to sit in a circle with people that I care about, or even people that I'm in conflict with, and we can figure out how to resolve this conflict in a peaceful manner. So ESP was definitely in effect with both of you, because literally I was thinking the same things. And the knowledge we have on this call. Thank you.
Pastor Spicer, those are the same things that work in the faith community: singing, dancing, drumming, and chanting. That's how we was. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
And Robert, you remind me, I was just talking about this book the other day, Dr. Ross Green's book, Lost at School. And it's all about when children are acting out, it is because they are lacking some sort of skill. And a lot
Yes.
of times, those lacking skills, when children are in some state of trauma, those skills become very apparent.
Yes.
Right? That they don't know how to manage their feelings, or they don't know how to respond, or they don't, there's lots of skills. And so when you can identify the skill and then build a plan to
Yes.
help them build those skills,
Yes.
it's really fascinating.
It
And I
flips the
want
script,
to
Dr. Donna. It flips
transition
the
a
script.
little. It totally does.
It flips it.
Absolutely. It flips the script. So I also, one of the things we were planning to talk about today was really that around the behavioral things. And I think, Dr. Robert, what you had said about climate and culture is what you practice, permit, and promote. It might be you that came from, but I heard it from someone else who was from Syracuse, and I suspect she might have gotten it from you. And it is something that I repeat as well.
Yes.
But I
Miss
want to get
Nicole.
into that school-wide behavioral stuff, that climate and culture stuff. And I want Dr. Joe also to be able to chime in here too. And Dr. Robert, like, when we have schools that are just embedded in these behavioral challenges, whether it's from trauma or lack of skills or whatever, like, frame up that problem for us. And what do we do? Like, how do schools actually turn around from that?
I think what the thing that we were blessed with is we had a visionary leader. And it's so important to have a leader in the building that is not trying to just lead from the front, but also lead from the back. And at points,
Right.
Lead as a drum major, just setting the tone. And we had that in the leader that we had at our school building. We also invested in social emotional learning. We were looking at the test scores. We were realizing that focusing solely on these educational models wasn't meeting the needs because the children weren't coming to school. And why they weren't coming to school? Because they didn't feel safe. And why they didn't feel safe? Because there were things going on outside of the school and even in the school that made them not feel safe. Going back to what our colleague had said, who had just left. So we had to really take on this whole notion of culture and climate. We had to literally be immersed in it, in the research. We had to be immersed in the great authors, as you just shared. And we had to really study and read it, and then begin to implement processes and programs that were focused in on meeting the needs of the young people, really asking those questions, and then showing up to the point where the parents and the young people began to trust us again. See, there was a lack of trust that was going on in the school building because of the fights, because of the different things that were going on. They felt like we didn't have control. And so the students decided that they didn't want to come to school. They didn't feel safe. But when we began to use these social emotional techniques, we began to create the opportunities for Peace Week, Peace Month, Peace Day, different opportunities where we were bringing in individuals who are supporting the young people in a positive way, and not just only meeting the needs of just the kids that were getting in trouble the most, those 5 to 7%, we call them the frequent flyers, but really looking at PBIS and really looking at the universal supports and making sure that 85% of our students were getting all of the restorative stuff. It was like Christmas tree. We're throwing everything you can imagine to these young people because we had resources from the native and reach out to our philanthropic community and not just think, oh, woe is us, we don't have enough money. No, my principal was like, nah, I'm gonna go out here, I'm gonna shake the can because our children are worth it. And once you have individuals like that in your school that really believe that the children can learn, can grow, can be prosperous in this work, because this is really about moving young people from being in poverty to moving them into the middle class. This is like a really big deal. Some of these children, this is the first one in their generation to go to college and finish. This is really a really big deal for really changing the whole scope of their family, in terms of the direction. We really have to make sure you have the right people on the bus, the right people in your school community, the right people that have the know-how to believe not only in those young people, but to also believe in themselves. Going back to what Dr. Collins said about your body, believing in yourself, that you can actually meet the needs of these young people. And if you feel like you can't, reach out to somebody to help you, because we believe that everybody was valued. We weren't, Dr. Powell said, we weren't throwing anybody over the wall. We were like, no. You have a gift, you have a talent, and we're going to help support you to help make these students successful, whether you're a coach, whether you're a counselor, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a custodian, right? Our custodial staff was so crucial. Our lunch aides were so crucial because they heard everything and they were able to bring back information that we were able to use to help us do better in our school. So we were using just about every and any tool we can use to really help meet the needs of these young people. But definitely having a leader that believes in using innovative techniques is crucial, because I couldn't have done any of the stuff that I did at that school, nor the stuff that we did at Syracuse, if we didn't have those innovative leaders that said, you know what, let's think out of the box and let's think in circle and let's see what happens. And that risk that they took, it worked out in a positive way for a lot of those young people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this my thing right here. How you turn around schools, and you mentioned the behaviors specifically. One thing I want us to center in on is that behavior, most of the time, it's an engagement problem before it's a discipline problem. So many times we try to isolate the behavior, but sometimes it's because the work is too difficult. It might be too easy. Just kind of depends on what's going on in those particular classrooms. So most of the time, those behaviors are a result of not being engaged, not having the instruction be interactive, not having teachers be able to do those formal checks, not improving or not implementing vocabulary like we should be, because it often goes back to that literacy and that literacy and learning gap. That's what leads to those behavior gaps. So when I think about that, we mentioned having that connection piece at the beginning, and that's got to come before any type of correcting or anything like that. And we mentioned the individuality as well as the variety piece that come with that. Now you take that step forward. Now you're talking about trying to make them empowered. You got to take them from ownership, from compliance to ownership, so that they'll understand what they're supposed to be doing every day. And then they're going to try to meet those needs. They're going to try to meet teachers and educators where they are. But we have to be in a mindset that we making sure that they belong, that they're accepted. See, with that belongingness and that acceptance piece comes the empowerment. You can't have one without the other, just like the individuality and then the diversity. And then you're talking about moving them then to where you truly got them collaborating, you truly got them working hard, their confidence is up, you using talk that builds them up instead of breaks them down. All that is purposeful. That's intentional. So when I think about those things, I know that they were very key in moving schools and having that school improvement and moving the data and improving the culture and improving the morale, making sure that the SEL pieces continue to go up. All that's important.
I would
Joe,
jump in here.
Dr. Joe, man, I hope this is recorded, because, man.
It is.
Oh, good. Okay. I was trying to take notes. I was trying to take notes with Dr. B. I was trying to take notes with Dr. Powers with that whole notion of regulate, you regulate, you can relate. I was like, God, dog, that's a bar. And then Dr. Collins, I was like, and then Dr. Don, and I'm like, oh shoot, I hope they don't think I'm on my phone. I was trying to go fast.
Oh, you laying it down too now.
Hey, I'm just thankful that it's being recorded so I go back, because everybody been dropping bars. Oh my goodness. What? Okay, I can chill now. All right, good. Yeah. I can really listen now. Okay, I'm locked in now. Let's go.
Well, I just want to say that we're recording. Everything's going live stream, so you will find it, and then we will share the link. So if you missed any notes, for those of you that are watching also, there's a replay. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Even the conversations are powerful. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, they're powerful, and it's like, I'm also taking a lot of the notes on my phone. So because I think it's important, and it's really important, Joe, what you just said, that we need to create, like, for children that have trauma, especially because I'm into learning theories, I'm into how do you make learning stick? And then if they have trauma and they have behavior issues, I mean, it's another issue, right? And helping them with the behavior and then also having them learn. So I think they need the predictable routines. They need to feel safe. They need a lot of repetition and they need to be allowed to move because if you just want them to sit and get, it's going to be so hard for them to sit because they'll sit and kind of fall asleep or just lose focus and attention, right? When a teacher's just talking and talking and talking. So
Well,
how do you keep
that's
them engaged?
that's instructional strategies. And I'm going to challenge something here, Angela. I hear, and all y'all, I hear all y'all talking about when a child is in trauma, when a child has behavior issues. That's a level of denial that we have to shatter. Every single child we deal with has some degree of overwhelming experience. Every child has been traumatized. Children aren't in trauma. They are reacting to what has happened to them in the past.
Yes.
And
Adults
that language makes a big difference because when you change it to what about what you just said that children who are, quote, in trauma need? Is it that children who aren't, quote, in trauma need? There's no difference. All children need those things. Children who have experienced overwhelming experiences more recently or that are pressing upon them more currently may need more of it, but all children need those, and so do all adults. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I would just piggyback on that. What I thank you, Dr. Powers, and I agree with Dr. Joe and Dr. Robert and Dr. B. Everything that you've said. And this is sometimes, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to study and take a step back away from schools a little bit because we are hyper focused on what is happening with students, but we're not hyper focused on the organizational development which replicates what's happening for students.
Yes.
So when I think about the lead, what Dr. Roberts said about the leader, we know the research has shown us that leadership makes a difference for students, right? And so when I think about, okay, so the leader has to be an innovative leader. The leader has to be a leader that's not moving forward the historical and generational discourses of oppression. The leader
Yes.
has to have that. Okay, well, we don't teach that really, but okay, we want a leader to have that. And then the teachers also need to have it, where their discourse and epistemology is not being superimposed on the students. You must sit down, Joe. Well, can I stand up? No, you can't. You must sit down.
Oh,
So
man.
this is where schools have become oppressive institutions because we're not allowing young people to be free. Period.
It is. It is.
I just dealt with that with my kid with his final. They were like, he didn't write it. And I said, oh, okay, well, write it over. Well, we don't know if he got the information from there. Well, here are his notes. Well, we don't understand, like, So what you're teaching my boy is you're teaching him, trying to institutionalize him. And it's not
Mhm.
important that he knows the content. It's more important that he obeys. You
Right.
must obey me. And then
Right.
we're going to go all the way back to the beginning of education. Why is there education?
Compliance.
Because we must teach you to obey us.
Because we
It's
didn't,
settler colonialism.
and the
So
way
we
that,
need to tear it down.
but we also need to think about what might we build in its place.
I'm
Yes.
with
Because we,
you, Dr. Powers. Dr. Power, I'm with you. Let's go.
come on, girl, let's get at it.
Together we can
I'm ready.
open our own amazing school.
Yes.
It is a dream of mine.
You know, we talk about regulation. I want to share with y'all something that I found that has really changed my life because it's, if I'm not doing the work, I can't expect my clients or my educators, the students to do the work. Did you know that there's been some really good research that maps out where people feel different emotions in their bodies, and it's cross-cultural. It's been tested across multiple cultures. It seems to be universal. If you go out on the internet and search this phrase, where do people feel emotions in their bodies? You'll find remarkable maps that look like thermography, but they're not. They are literally about where people feel activated, which is depicted in the yellows and reds and oranges. and where they feel deactivated, which is depicted in black and blue. I come from an Appalachian family, and the flat face you see is pretty much my family's expression for happy, sad, glad, mad, and everything else. Because if we show you our face, if we show you our feelings, you might use them against us. Every person of color I know understands this intuitively, and so do people in Asia. That I cannot show you, have to live behind my face. That doesn't mean I don't have feelings. It just means that I don't know the names of them or where I might feel them in my body, and then I therefore also will not know what I can do to turn the volume up and down. It's a really simple kind of mechanical process. But that one chart, because if you stick with just the 9 basic ones and begin to use that as a reference point when you're teaching, if I'm teaching English language, I might be having students look at a story and say, okay, great. So here's a story. Tell me, what do you think that person, where do you think that person might have felt activated? What might be the name of the feeling that person might be experiencing? And if that person is experiencing it, where might they feel it in their body? And what might they do that's family oriented to reduce that, to turn that up or down? And that's the one thing that's helped me in my own personal life, and that might be very helpful to educators as well as to students.
And I hear in that the importance of relevance and having children be able to see the applicability of what they're doing. And so in the example you gave, not only are they analyzing a scenario that they've read about, but now they're personalizing it and they're starting to connect with it. And this goes, you know, directly to Joe's point of there's so much that we can do around instructional strategies. And Joe and I speak this language very fluently, and I know Dr. and Angelica does as well. But there are so many culturally responsive strategies that are also trauma responsive, and they draw children in. My son, and he knows I talk about him all the time. He's 23 now, but he was a kid who hated school. He was struggling in geometry class. It's the only class he ever didn't pass. And right around December, they were working on proofs, geometric proofs, and he was not understanding it, even though he could like talk through all like living, breathing proofs in real life. And I'd be like, "Oh, Evan, that's a proof," and he'd go, "You're just saying that because you're a teacher, Mom." Well, one day he asked his geometry teacher, when am I ever going to use proofs? And his geometry teacher responded with, "Well, probably never." Now, his geometry teacher had no clue on what proofs meant in his automotive classes. And so he wasn't able to make his learning relevant.
Right.
And so the first thing Evan did was check out. He was like, "I'm all set." And then he turned into a behavior problem in that classroom because that teacher he wasn't able to connect the content to anything real. And I couldn't help him because I'm just a teacher, even though like I see geometry in our world. I was quite good at geometry. And he's like, "Mom, everything I need is in this little thing that's in my pocket." And he would whip that thing out and he's like, "I need to know how to do my taxes. I need to know how to apply for loans. I need to know how to budget." He's like, "I don't need to know all of this other stuff." Like he wants relevance. That's what our children are really working on, or like that's their frame of mind. And it's not how our curriculum is built. It's not how our standards are built.
It's not how educators are taught to teach.
That's not how they talk.
Y'all are taught to teach in silos, not holistic ways.
No, and not humanistically either. Not humanistically.
Yeah.
You know, is it more important that you able to track every keystroke when education is not really using AI? Like the students are way beyond. Business is way beyond our educational system. And why are we humanizing situations rather than teaching people how to fall in line? A brilliant person like your son is going to say, "No, thank you. It's not worth it.
He's
It's not
debating
worth
right
it to me."
now Yeah, he's medically retired from the Navy now. He was working for Amazon. He's now at the point where he's like considering going to college. I just about fell off my chair when he told me that. But he's like, do I really need to go to college? Because I'm going to be forced to take all of these courses that I'm not going to need in my profession, but I want to learn what I need. And I said, just take the courses that you need then. He's in IT. They go by certification now. They don't go necessarily by what degree you have. So I don't know.
Yeah, I
So
want to add in too about what Dr. Power said about the asking the students how the feelings are. Because here's a tool I've been using for the last year. It's it's a feeling wheel, and on one side of the wheel it says my needs are met, and on the other side of the wheel it says my needs are not met. And I've been using it personally because I'm like, well, what are your feelings? Well, I don't know because we were taught not to have any. So when I look at the feelings wheel, it tells on the other side, it'll say, like, if you're angry with the other side, will tell you what the mirror of that is. And in Dr. Greenspan's work, I love Dr. Greenspan's work. I wrote a pilot for it for elementary and ran it in elementary and in high school. But what I loved about his developmental levels is level 1 was regulation, level 2 was shared attention. Level 3 was two-way communication. Level 4 was problem solving. And at level 4, a variety of emotions came at that level. And so when kids didn't have a level, like weren't expressing an emotion, I knew, oh, they're constricted at level 4. So I would work with them on level 4. Level 5 was creating ideas. Level 6 was building on the ideas that you created. And with that model, that's how I taught my class.
Boy, howdy, that's wonderful. I'd love to overlay Blooms on that and see what Blooms does for each level.
I was thinking
That would
the
be
same
great.
Blooms connects with that, and as well PBIS. It sounds like there's a
Mhm.
connection with that as well. Like the Greenspan sounds like he was an incredible man, an incredible mentor.
He was.
yeah.
He
Thank you for
was.
sharing.
And what he did was he looked at kids that had the diagnosis of PDD NOS. If you can imagine telling a parent, well, pervasively otherwise delayed, and we don't know why. And he worked with those students using floor time, and those students became walking, talking, brilliant, graduating students.
Look at that. Awesome.
Yeah. I think that we also don't recognize the true brilliance in every single child. We see it in some and it's easily recognizable, but for those who, like Elizabeth, have that straight face all the time or are struggling to get in touch with being able to manage or talk about and put names to their feelings. I forgot where I was going with this. I forgot where I was going with this. Anyway.
I agree. We don't value
that
them.
right there. So
yeah. We don't see the brilliance all the time. Go ahead.
One of the key
ahead,
things
Dr.
that we also have to think about, and for so long we had education, reading, achievement as if this particular group just couldn't perform, or this particular students, they just didn't get the skills. But now, especially with more of the science of reading research coming out, even though it's been out for 50 plus years, and I am a part of that Mississippi miracle, and it really is a miracle. A lot of people hating on the miracle, but it really is a true deal. We put in the work in order over time. Like that was a 15, 20-year process is what people don't realize. But what I was saying was the key part of that is that learning, reading, that comes from explicit instruction. If I'm in my pre-K, kindergarten, first, second, and third grade classes, and I'm not getting that individual support, that small group support, in addition to what the teacher is doing for the entire room, little Johnny might miss out on being able to connect this particular sound group. He might not understand how to put this particular words on the page with the words that he's able to hear as well as speak and understand. So if I go through school and I don't get those foundational skills, now I'm going to become not only a behavior problem, now you're going to label me as an academic problem, but it was all because the adults didn't give those particular students. And in rare cases, we got students with disabilities, and we do have severe learning problems as well. I'm not saying that, but in most instances, it was that missing piece of explicit, one-on-one, just downright caring instruction.
Yeah.
And that really relies on the neuroplasticity that we've all got. I was unable to read numbers because of dyscalculia until I was in my 60s.
Wow.
And I resonate with what you're saying, because all the explicit instruction that people tried to give me was great, but it didn't work for what I needed. What I needed was a lot simpler, and I needed to have, I think probably the different kinds of intelligence. I needed the physicality of using cornmeal and a baking pan and matchsticks to try and put things together. And finally, because I was so stubborn, not me, it clicked.
Yeah.
And I just finished a big data project for a social media company.
Right. See, it's about, and I'm gonna stop. It's about 50 plus letter combinations that make over 250 something different sounds. You all, like, it's really deep. Like, and if you miss 5 or 10 of those, and that can impact what you're able to do. And say you only got 125 of those.
Yeah.
See, that's the difference between your 1, 2, 3s, and 4s on those particular levels. If I get half of the information, or I get a quarter of the information, guess what? I'm gonna be minimal. I'm gonna be basic. Now, if I'm getting on those proficient and more advanced level, I'm gonna be 3, 4, and 5, depending on your particular state, your particular scale. But they missed that piece of the instruction. Literally, they weren't slow. They missed it. So then it became not a learning gap. Then it became a behavior gap. And now you throw in all the different trauma and all the things that we go through. That's a lot, you are.
But I'm going to come back to the beginning of that. If my brain has decided, for whatever squirrely reason, that something is so serious that I might die or lose my mind or be badly injured, it doesn't matter what moment that occurs. The first thing my brain is going to do is it's going to focus everything on physical survival, and there's no room for learning. Your brain cannot learn when you're scared. It's not its job. And when you have children that do not seem to learn, it is because either they are scared in the moment, or they have been scared in the past, and you've just hit the hole in the Swiss cheese.
Right.
And when we look at it, instead of automatically assigning mental disorders to that child because they behave badly, and by the way, I try to speak the way my neighbors speak. I had them come over one day and say, "Oh my God, my daughter, they said they were going to terminate her in therapy. Are they going to kill her?" I said, "No, it just means they're done with that particular piece of work." So I've learned to talk about behaving badly and other things like my neighbors taught. But when we assign mental disorders to behavior driven by being frightened, we are doing a child and a society a terrible injustice. Because we need all of the combinations you're talking about. We need for different people to have different combinations without it being considered a deficit, that they don't have X, Y, and Z. Because when we help them calm and regulate, and when they can actually focus in different ways, they may be able to match that. But boy, the Mississippi Miracle is one of the things that people don't talk enough about, or about the time it took.
Right.
We're talking about long-term change for all of us.
Right. But I think what Dr. Joe just did, and I think all of us that did it at different points in our talk, was we made it personal. Yeah. And Dr. Donna, as you talked about your son, I was thinking about my daughter. And my daughter has a learning difference, and she struggled in school. She didn't have the same things, Dr. Joe, that you were talking about. I did my best as an educator, and I hear you, Dr. Collins, what you did in advocating for your son. I did my best. But once she was diagnosed with that learning difference, now it became a whole notion of, what do you want to do in your life? Where do you want to go? What type of young lady do you want to be? She's turning 21. She has a twin. She's turning 21 June 12th. And she's in college. and she has her own job. And I'm relating, I'm hearing you, Dr. Joe, and your passion. I'm hearing you as you're talking about this learning gap and this behavior gap that could have happened if we didn't have the wherewithal as Dr. Collins had and Dr. Power had, and as well you, Dr. Donna, had to advocate for our children as parents and to be empowered as we are as educators. But think of the many parents out here that don't feel empowered to advocate for their child, to go to bat and say, look, you are trying to control my child. You're not trying to give my child agency to be the best that he or she can be. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Joe, for relating that. But you didn't just relate it in terms of just, numbers or anything. Your passion came right through the screen, specific to not only the miracle of what Mississippi, and I'm going to do my own research and hopefully we can connect. You can tell me more about this miracle. I should know about this, and I'm educated, so I should know what's going on down south of me on 55.
From last to ninth in the nation. You don't know about it?
Oh, I do remember that. I do remember that.
But I'm hearing the passion, Dr. Joe, as it relates to if we just tweak this part right here, our students will be able to get to the place where we want them to go. But yet the teachers and the administration didn't know that that's what it was and kept going about their daily business in the way, insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results.
Exactly.
And so I just want to thank you for bringing it home for me from a personal standpoint, being a parent of a young lady that's learning, has a learning difference, and then trying to figure out how I can and how my wife can, as they are moving into adult life, continue to support them. And then they feel empowered when they become parents to do the same thing. So I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah, really. Thank you.
And thank you, all of you for bringing those personal things, Dr. Collins, about your son, Dr. Powers, and then of course, Dr. Donna, about your son. Thank you for making it personal, because this is personal. I'm gonna see these guys in the neighborhood, right? I'm gonna see these young ladies. I'm gonna see these people. I'm getting older. I'm gonna have to depend on you eventually for my Social Security and for my other, the other needs, Medicare, Medicaid, all that. But if we warehousing you in jail, if we locking you up, or you're not able to make a livable wage, then what are our chances as elders to be a support to them? So thank you, Dr. Joe, and all of you. Thank you.
I just want to say to all of you that I'm going to be here, but you're going to see two of me for now, but I'm still here.
Two better than one.
Yes.
And I'm having some internet difficulties. My internet's going in and out, so my apologies for that. But the way that, we're all in similar spaces here, right? So we've got a few people who are working with restorative justice, a few people who are working specifically with trauma, a few people who are working with instruction and that connection to behavior. And Dr. B and I always quote our friend, Dr. Robbie Motter, and she always says, we don't compete, we complete each other. And this call right here is it exemplifies how we can be in similar spaces, and because we have different experiences, because we may have read a few different things or whatnot, there is room in the world for all of this work, for all of us to be doing similar work, and we complete each other. There's just so much work to do out there to transform our educational system. And when we think about the educational system, it is one of the biggest systems that we have and interact with. The only other system that touches every single person like this does, like education does, would be healthcare. Healthcare and education are the two biggest systems, and we have a need to turn the Titanic quickly, but the Titanic doesn't turn quickly.
No, it does not.
And so how do we catch up? How do we how do we finally, because our society has turned very quickly, but in education, we're not quite able to make that tight turn just yet. So what, just to fi- finalize, because we're almost at our 2 hours. Can you believe it? Didn't feel like it.
Wow.
Um, what would you say, each of, and I'll let each of you respond to this. What should school districts, teachers, administrators, what, you take your pick. What should they stop doing? What should they start doing? Or what should they continue doing?
That's an excellent question. What should they stop doing? What should they continue to do? And then what was the other part?
Start doing.
What should they start? That's an excellent question.
That's a
Thank
great
you.
question.
That's an excellent question. That's a thought-provoking question, Dr. Donna. Thank you for that. I'm gonna be chewing on that after this session.
No, we used to
Because I have
ask
to
that
think
in the
about it for
quality in
myself.
education.
I have to think about it for myself, right? As a consultant, like, what should I start doing? What should I stop doing? What should I continue? Like, man, that's a very broad question. Well, I think one of the things that, just to answer, I'm just going to answer just the first one. What should they, or the last one? What should they should start doing? Is they should start being open to education is not a one-way street, but a two-way street. That as much as education is me as an educator with my PhD or my certificates or standing before you giving this information, there's a lot of learning that also can occur from you as young people. And so when you can create that environment in your classroom and create it as a learning environment, not as only a job readiness environment, but really a learning environment where we can make mistakes, where F is not an F, but it's, as Dr. Power said, this is an opportunity for you to, you didn't get it yet, right? And so creating that opportunity. When I hear about entrepreneurs, people that are out here in this world, they say failure is the best educator. Many people have lost money, lost businesses, all type of stuff, but it was on their way to become billionaires. So it's such a difference than what we hear in the school setting, that when you fail, you're bad and there's shame tied to it. When an entrepreneur will tell you, no, failure is where I learned the most about being in business. So there needs to be a way of reshaping education to move away from a factory preparedness mentality to an entrepreneurial and an AI accessible space, because it's here now. But what are we going to do? We need to start embracing these tools, but also not forget that we are human and that we need our needs met moving forward. So thank you, Dr. Donna, for that question. I'm going to sit down.
You're very welcome. I'm glad I could joggle your mind.
That one got me. That caught me off guard. I was, okay. Thank you.
Well, yeah, that was a great answer, Doc. Dr. Spicer.
Thank you, Dr.
One of the things that I think that we have to start emphasizing and doing more intentionally is creating these literacy rich environments, meaning that words are a focus, reading is a focus, word walls, you got all these different type of vocabulary initiatives, reading clubs, as well as your numeracy clubs and initiatives as well, because all of that is a part of literacy.
Yeah.
I think we should couple that with also a bigger focus on individual development within our students, individual and small group development as an initiative, as something that we incorporate systemically all of the time, that is not an option, and that we provide students with a better chance, And I think that we need to stop alienating students and teachers. I think that we want people to get to a place of collaboration where we actively are working together. That means that we've got to have commitment and accountability. So it's hard to be committed to something and they're not appropriate supports and accountability measures in place to ensure that that commitment goes through. And then vice versa, on the other side of that, it's hard for me to be held accountable if I'm not committed. So we got to again push that individual piece in not forcing, but influencing that connection, that empowerment, and that collaboration so that we can have our schools and move students to where they need to be.
Thank you, Dr. Bill. Excellent.
Yeah. Would anyone else like to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll respond. Schools, as I said, are built on settler colonialism, and as an organizational theorist, I have to take a big step back. And we, schools are great systems that replicate the same thing over and over again. And in order to make a change, we have to get into the foundation of those practices. So, how do you get into the foundation of the practices? Well, one, you look at data, but not the kind of data that we typically look at. We want to look at the kind of data like an equity audit would provide. And as my colleague, Dr. Khalifa says, we want to talk to the students and parents who are not trained, who have been pushed to outside of the system. We want to look at those discourse with a big D. What are the ideas I'm bringing into the school and superimposing on the students? So that leadership, culturally responsive leadership, is vital. You want to take culturally responsive out, humanizing leadership is vital to creating communities where students can, all the things that Dr. Joe said, all the things that Dr. Robert said, all of those things can happen when a leader is not trying to superimpose the way they grew up onto my child. And I think those foundational pieces are the thing that we are really good at taking on an initiative and we'll do it. And then when it doesn't work, we're going to pick another initiative and we'll do that. And when there's a very good leader who is watching what Dr. Joe talked about, if you expect it, you're inspecting it. You're watching it, you're in the classrooms, you're building relationships, all the things that we know that Dr. Robert talked about, then we are creating an innovative classroom and an innovative school community. But if we continue to replicate what has been shown to us that is not working for anyone, or lower SES, gendered, it doesn't matter. It's not working. It only teaches to the middle, and that's it.
Doesn't
They
even do
don't
that real
struggle.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you remind me of there's an incredible educator I worked with. I used to want to snuggle up to her and have her read me a story. She was just that type of educator. Her name was Lillian Turnipseed. Her grandparents were sharecroppers on a turnip seed farm. And she was amazing. So she used to tell us and remind us all the time, because when Lillian spoke, she didn't say many words, but when she spoke, you listened. And she was that type of person. And she would say every day, parents send us the best that they have. And if we can keep that in mind, every child deserves the best of us, because we're getting the best that they can be in that moment. And if we can improve their lives in any way, whether it's teaching them skills that they don't have yet, or it's getting them engaged in something, or it's helping them deal with or manage their trauma, then we're doing what we need to do.
I think
So,
that's so spot on. I think one of the things that I want to say that would help if we began to do it is to begin to believe that people really do the best that they can. Again, maybe only 2% of us don't deliberately do not do the best that we can. And when we when we inflict harsh judgment on others by deciding that they are not doing the best they can, whether they are students or staff, we lose our ability to be compassionate. And education and learning flourish in healthy compassion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yes.
I always help remind educators that um nobody wakes up in the morning and
I think you got
Hey,
stuck.
Donna, are you speaking?
naturally want to have
Yeah,
a good.
There.
there you go. You got stuck. So start over.
Oh, I got stuck. Okay, of course. Um there's no one in the world who wakes up in the morning and says, I want to have a really bad day today,
Period.
or I really want to mess up somebody else's day, or I want to make sure that my teacher has the worst day ever. Nobody ever wakes up and thinks that. They wake up hoping that today's going to be better than yesterday,
Yeah.
right? They wake up more full of hope than trying to make sure things go bad. And that's just human nature. And I think
Hmm.
we have to embrace that, and when somebody's having a bad day, give them some grace.
Yeah. I believe that. I believe that there's not a teacher that wakes up and wants to hurt a child or blame a child. I just don't believe that. I just don't. And and also I think our system, the way that we what I used to get this reports, this is how you did on your testing, that our system doesn't allow, like, when students are struggling, then the system blames the teacher.
Yes.
And
Yep.
this system, like, it doesn't work. We're not humanizing what's happening.
We're not
And
living in reality.
no.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times, so I've built a diagnostic tool that looks at coherent systems and how coherent systems are, and leadership, decision making, and the energy that we put into things. And student outcomes are a lagging indicator, right? We don't see student outcomes until it's too late. Just like your check engine light in your car, when it comes on, there's something going on typically, right? Even if it's a bad sensor that you can't see, or it's a leaky gasket in the middle of your engine that you can't see, right? So when student outcomes aren't what we hope they are, research says that it's directly like what a teacher does directly impacts student outcomes. And I also say, what is even before that? What is not allowing teachers? What in the system is preventing teachers from instructing in ways that we know will help children cognitively develop? Right? There's something else in the system, deeper in the system, getting in the way, and we need to look at other factors, because these systems are big and they're human and they're not perfect. So
Well, I
Teacher
just want to
development.
say, Donna, and one of the things that I feel that because education or some of our top leaders don't want to create change because they've been doing what they've been doing forever and they keep doing it. And in one of the districts that I was working in, the state took over because of that concept and that ideology of, no, this is the way we're doing it. And even if we try to create changes and we brought research, we were always told no, right? So then how can you impact change? How can you support the, our children that are struggling even with behavior or trauma or any learning abilities, because the system doesn't want to change, right?
mhm.
So that's where I struggled, and I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore
Yeah,
because we kept doing the same thing. And now that I'm not there, the state took over the whole district, you know? So,
yeah. And to that point also of I've been at leadership meetings, the decision making table multiple times, and and put out solutions that I have seen work in other places and been told, you will never see that happen here. And when I press why and why and why, it finally comes out that it's hard work. So you mean to tell me that we're not willing to do and try something that works because it's hard work, and then you get the backpedaling, but you'll still never see it here. And I'm very tired of hearing that, because I know that we can, I know that we can get the system turned around. Maybe I'm just far too optimistic.
No, I
But we
don't
have
think
to have
so.
people who want to.
Yeah,
We
our
have to
children
have
are our
people
most
who
precious
want to work.
commodity. Like
Absolutely.
what, and uh when we have to say we must feed and clothe and take care of the children, we are not in a good place. But that is exactly what we have to do.
Yeah.
Do any of you all are, I know I'm as old as dirt, do any of you all remember the quality in education movement back in the 90s?
Mm-hmm.
It might be time to consider revising that, because I think I'm speaking from the private sector side. Um, we're not particularly good at selling things into educational systems, I don't think. I'm certainly not. Let me rephrase, I'm not. Um, the most success I had in my company came when I discovered a question that had a compelling answer, which is, which would you rather have, mental illness or higher emotional intelligence?
Mm.
And I think that the skill of influence and selling into systems is really difficult to master. I by no means think I've gotten it down pat. I vacillate between burn it all down and start over and insidious systematic change. One of the things that the quality in education movement did was it began to help us think about who our customers are and what they really needed. But again, and in Tennessee, where we have so many charter schools and they're trying to privatize public, they're trying to wipe out public education.
Oh, nationwide.
Yeah. There, I think we might be 3 steps ahead of the rest of the country in this state. I'm not so sure. Looking at what are we doing and for what reason, there's only so far we can go before we run smack back into colonization of human beings for the purpose of people who believe they're in authority. I I don't know how we do this in a way that is successfully insidious, but I think it is going to be starting with the adults, helping educators have higher levels of ability to cope with what goes on in the classroom, and dismantling some of the things that we believe that are simply not grounded in reality. It's one of the reasons I fuss about, we're not in trauma, we've experienced trauma, we're reacting from it, but it's not a looking at language and how we can talk about things in ways that people can hear. I'm very guilty of saying things in ways that they might be strong and powerful, but may not be ways that people can hear them. My mother's often said that I was as strong as an acre of freshly mown garlic, and she's probably right. But if I were in Italy, this would be great.
Yeah. Well, I am just honored to be on this call with all of you. I'm so glad that we're able to share some insights with the world. This will be on YouTube, or is streaming on YouTube. And so it will be there for in forever. Um, and I want to thank each and every one of you for hopping on here with us, engaging in this discussion. Each one of you, I always feel like whenever I talk to you, I could talk to you for hours. And together, I think I could talk to you all for days. Right. And you're
Might be a
just
conference.
incredible people and so knowledgeable, and keep changing the world. I think together we can change the world. So I'm just gonna close up here because we're a little bit over time, 10 minutes over time.
I just want to say, Donna, that it's on LinkedIn. We also have it on Facebook, and we will share the link with you. So if you look for Angelica Benavides, and then we'll put it on our in our Improve Ed the YouTube link, and then you can share it yourself with other people.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
So thank you for joining us, and some of you, I mean, actually all of you, I'm in the my brain is like thinking, oh man, I gotta connect Dr. Robert Spicer with Dr. Kai Smith, and I've got to connect him with Circle Mama. If you haven't met Circle Mama, you got to meet Circle Mama from Ed Tomorrow, and you know, with the indigenous populations, speaking with Jonathan Santos Silva and Dr. Rosemary Claremont, and I'm just thinking of all these connections that I want to connect you all with, and have even further conversations about some of these things on here, because man, like I said, we could solve the world. We could solve the world's problems here. So
Yeah,
everyone have a good
absolutely.
day, and we'll meet again.
I'll be emailing everybody.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll
It was
put you
such an
all
honor.
in an email together. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Bye for now.
Love you
Bye-bye,
all.
you all.
Thank
See
you,
you
everybody.
later.
Bye-bye.
The second lane from right.
Darius, go ahead and leave the platform. Donna, sorry, I'm multitasking here.